Don't plan these things out, so let me just try going off the top of the dome piece. As far as the book update, there's a lot. I don't even want to get into it. I'll put it in the patch notes, something much, much, much longer in my posts that'll kind of go through the more specifics of, the kind of things, as vague as I like to be, of what's been going on in the book. Mainly, it's just a lot of working on just auxiliary characters, just new stories, things that don't have anything to do with the core details of the main story that goes forward for most of the characters that I feel are kind of like the main ones that carry, as an anchor throughout. I'm doing this a lot. I'm sorry. But anyway, getting away from that because I've been listening to, after a very long time, I think it's been like a month and a half since I actually listened to my story from start to wherever I needed. And it just flowed. It just went. Like, there wasn't a point in time where I was like, yeah, okay. And I feel as though when that section of chapter one comes to a close, I've already set up so many different stories that it's interesting. I don't know. That's the best I could tell you. It's interesting. I really never thought of building stories for anyone besides the main character. I never really thought of shifting the focus to other characters besides the ones that are really the ones that are important for the main thread. But main thread is done. Well, not completely done as far as like in writing. The ideas for all satellite notes and all that stuff, but nothing's been weaved together and actually implemented yet. However, yeah, just the expanded cast is I'm having such a hard time because I know that there's gonna be just some bad times that have to happen in any story, and the idea of anything negative happening to any of these characters is just bumming me the f out. Like, it's just so annoying. Like, I really, really like building on these really cool, sweet moments, and one of the things I mentioned in my posts is that I also super enjoy the fact that I could write a scene that seems like it really has nothing to do with anything. For me, anything means the main story. So it doesn't do anything to add to the discoveries or the interest or the mystique of things that are happening. It's just a scene of kind of character building, and in the end, it still has its purpose in my story because there will be kind of something that happens much, much, much later that has to do with what the scene is. So even though it's like, again, I'll just go right into it. There's a character that his name is Pharynx. Him and his best friend Chorus, attached at the hip. In many situations, you'll understand that the people view Pharynx as kind of just a very flirty kind of guy. Like, you'll see his relationship with Chorus, and you'll kind of be like, are they like into each other? Like, nah. But it's very, for me, like, just writing that type of stuff and then rereading it over and being like, I could see how people would think that. But just two people, whether it's male, female, male and a female, or whatever combination is it, for me, like, so far nothing ever has been of a romantic sense. So even though people are teasing each other, even though people are very playful, even though people can be very comfortable with that other person, it's never really on a like a romantic level or anything like that. These are people that just really love each other. They're very close to each other, and Pharynx and Chorus in particular are just, they may as well be twins. It's just the way they kind of reflect upon another. Their personalities are very, very different. So in this scene, we have Pharynx. He just wants to kind of show off for a girl. He knows she's interested in something, and so he wants to learn that something and to kind of show off for her. But he's not really like a research and figure it out kind of guy. He's more of a kind of like, yeah, tell him what he needs to get done. He can do that. And so that's where Chorus comes in. The big skill and talent for Chorus in the relationship is that he is the one who, he'll listen to him, and he doesn't really mind kind of helping him out in his like silly little adventures. Like, he's been turned down so many times, but he doesn't ever get bummed out about it. He's just that kind of guy who's just altogether happy. He's the kind of guy that's like, if you don't want to be my girlfriend, at least we could be friends. Like, that kind of guy. He's not trying to be like a creep or a jerk or anything like that to people. So in a particular situation, it just happens where there's a lot of work that needs to go into this. Just to tell you, the girl is into dancing, a specific particular kind. And so course basically just he dives into the research. He's learning about it. He learns it for himself, and then he passes it on to Pharynx, and he's like, all right, this is. He kind of creates a choreography for them, and Pharynx is very much go all in. So it's gonna be this. It's not just gonna be like him and this other person. It's gonna be this big presentation, this big show. There's gonna be people just watching and enjoying the events that are happening. And he really thrives on that. He really loves that type of stuff. Which I've said like a million times. Is the word I use when I'm trying to like get the wheels going to kind of express myself. So excuse the million but either way, let's see. Damn it. So in that situation, you have essentially just a guy flirting with this chick, and doing this thing in order to kind of grease the wheels a little bit. It's not gonna work. She's gonna flat out turn him down. Spoilers, sorry. But what happens from the people watching, the people that are just like, we've never seen this kind of thing before, and very unexpected characters might actually find it just absolutely fascinating. They might be in love with it, the idea of what they were doing and how they could apply it to, in this instance for the characters I'm writing, in the story I'm writing, a guy sees it and he's like, I could use that in a fight. Like, he sees that and he just sees that different way of moving, and he's just imagining them with a weapon and what kind of destruction they can cause with just what they were doing. That's where his mind went. He's not just watching this cute dance of some guy trying to like flirt with some chick. His mind is just going in that other direction. He's getting very, very excited about it. And so from that, events kind of push forward. So it allows me to do something which, just for this example, it tells a lot of what I'm doing with a lot of other things, where I'm able to write a scene that is very much expressive of the characters involved with it and their relationships, and the play with them back and forth and things like that. But more than just character building, there's going to be callbacks. There's going to be a cause and effect, because people have seen this, even though they're completely detached from the situation, they still kind of work it out themselves on how they feel about what they've seen. That's going to be a big thing in my story, just the idea of a lot of different people seeing maybe the same thing and coming away with just very different opinions and viewpoints on it. And so that's a lot of what I'm working on. That I tried my best to boil this video note down to just that example. I feel like that's a very good example to kind of describe where my mind is right now in my story. There's a lot of different characters. That was just one very brief example, but the idea for that, the guy flirting with this chick, they become good friends, but then someone who saw what was going on, he's talking to someone else, that someone else and him kind of work out this kind of like battle scenario, like how to actually use this in that kind of situation. Things happen, time passes, and you'll see kind of how that reflects. So in the end, the idea is you'll see a scene, hopefully it'll just bring a smile to your face, but then way later on, you'll have a scene that will just call back to it, that'll just say, what happened there was very impactful. It was very important to somebody, and that made a difference. That may save someone's life. That silly little thing where some guy was flirting with someone, may actually end up saving someone's life, later on. So I love writing stuff like that. It's so cool. And so just that's where I'm at right now. I am kind of freed from the idea of having to do so much with the main core cast, as far as my opinion goes, that now I can just kind of have fun with the window dressing, just the other people around them that kind of reflect upon them and influence them in the ways they're going to be feeling, thinking, and acting in the future. And just seeing that kind of stuff and building that kind of stuff, it just makes the relationships that I'm building feel so much more interesting and so much more annoying, knowing that I'm going to have to do what I'm going to have to do with these characters. I would love to write a book where from start to finish, it's just this really fun story of really cool people being great, but it's going to have a little bit of wrinkle every once in a while. It's going to have for some pretty negative stuff happening, I guess, I suppose. But even though that stuff is like contemplated and there's like outlines for things like that, it's just not the priority right now. The priority is just, the more I do things like this, the more it makes future things just make so much sense, and it's blowing my mind how I do that. It's just it's just the process where I build the scene. I have this idea, and this idea reflects upon something else. In fact, the idea for the whole date thing and him trying to impress someone else wasn't even the beginning of it. The beginning of it happened otherwise, where I was like, what if someone saw something that impacted kind of how they work in a fight? I've been thinking a lot of like those scenarios, and that's what came up, where it was just like, what if they saw something like that, that's just in the environment that they live in, seeing something like that, it would be kind of special. It would be something that they don't get exposure to like ever. So having that be something that carries forward seems really cool. All right, have I beaten the same kind of idea to death already? I think you get it. I get you get what I'm doing. You understand, right? You know, it's not going so bad. But yeah, I don't want to get into like every single detail of every single character. There's been a lot of things. There's been fight choreography changes, ability changes. There's been toning down to the magic system. There's been logistics, just where characters are and how they are there and why that makes sense. To everything from the map, like, you know, just the placement of certain things. And for example, in the prologue, it starts in this cabin, and by this point in me exploring all these other stories, all these characters, and moving them around, and then showing off what they're good at and how they reflect upon other people and things like that, I'm able to just explain how the cabin came into existence. That was always kind of a problem for me, because there's a thing that's there, and it's not something I really want to get into, but it's important enough where I always needed, or I felt like I needed to explain it. And now it's no longer like in the introduction of it, I slap down something that's like, you know, this is what's kind of going on, don't worry about it, let's move on, to actually kind of weaving that in through the greater story. Someone else talked about it, so by the time you see it, or if you saw it already, you have that to rely on. I don't have to, you know, jam a bunch of details into a paragraph just because I created something and I want to quickly explain it. I'm getting away from that very much, and easily. I'm having fun with that. It's just, you know, every time I can just explain something through the story where things are happening, I love just going back and being like, oh, well, I don't need this paragraph anymore, or I could change up this sentence or things like that. That's what's going on. That's my update. That's pretty good, I guess. Am I done? Is there anything else? No, I guess that's it. All right, bye.